Hey everyone, Doug here with B&H, and thanks for coming on set with us today. We're here to look at something very exciting. This is Panasonic's brand new S1RII. It's a full-frame mirrorless camera, 44.3 megapixels, 8.1K video, and so much more to talk about. We're here to really shoot commercial and product photography. This is a hybrid shooter's dream camera because you have not just the ultra-high resolution of both the stills and the video side of things, but you also have the speed and precision necessary for something like sports and wildlife shooting even. You have 40 FPS burst modes here, so that alone gets you into that territory, combined with the resolution, and you can start doing really interesting things with tight crops of images or both horizontal and vertical crops of video. Now, why do I say that? Because on top of the 8.1K on its own, which is really good, you also have 6.4K open gate mode for video. You have Cinema 4K 120 FPS mode. You even have ProRes RAW internally recorded at up to 5.8K, which if you need that, if you want that, you have it here. You don't need an external recorder or monitor to get the job done. Now, this is of course the follow-up to one of Panasonic's debut full-frame cameras, I believe back in 2019, the original S1R. And for the keen viewers out there, you probably do recognize that that camera was 47.3 and this is 44.3 megapixels, but worry not, at that range, we're really splitting hairs. This is a completely new sensor design, and all the stuff that has been improved is what really matters here. We're talking things like dynamic range, ISO sensitivity, readout speeds, thus the burst rate potential, and of course, and probably most critically, autofocus. That has been completely changed here and in most of Panasonic's recent mirrorless cameras, so I'm glad to say, very glad to say, that the autofocus here is superb. Now we're gonna put a little bit of everything to the test here today, but honestly, even then, we're only scratching the surface of this camera. On the video side, we're gonna be doing a fake commercial shoot to show some of the options you have there. And on the photo side, we're gonna do a tethered setup with some strobes along with some continuous burst shooting to really show just how fast you can go with this camera. So we're just about to get started here. I wanted to go through some of the resolution options we have here though. If I go into the main menu here, we have rec quality, and you can see it really runs the gamut. I have everything starting from the top of 8.1K down 6.4K, 5.9K, 5.8K, 4.7K, Cinema 4K, which is DCI. It gives you all the information, so you get the resolution and the ratio. You don't have to really determine that or figure it out. It gives you the frame rate, the subsampling, bit depth, if it's an intra or inter-frame codec, the audio format, and even the bit rate itself. So you never have to worry, there's no ambiguity here. So I'm just gonna exit the menu. We're gonna go hit Q, and you can see here, I have my resolution slider, so I can just, I can just go between all the options. And you can see the framing change in real time without you having to go out of the menu. So you can see, like here at 5.9K, you can see the crop happening, not just vertically and not just vertically, but also horizontally. So depending on what you do, you have different options. 4.7K is the 4:3 quote unquote open gate mode. It's a Super 35 crop that is also 4:3. So this is ideal for things like anamorphic lenses, or if you want a very traditional Super 35 type shoot. If you're trying to shoot something that looks like, you know, 90s TV, perhaps, this actually could be a really good way to do it. I am gonna just stick with 8.1K 24p right now. This is the highest resolution. It's technically not the most open. That would be the 6.4K mode right now. So you can see here, this is the truly open gate, full readout 3:2 mode. The 8.1K is full readout, don't be mistaken, it just crops to hit a 17:9 ratio. So we're gonna start with that for today. Later on, we'll dive into the open gate mode, and we'll also, of course, do some slow motion as well. Rolling take 2 wide. So let's talk autofocus for a minute. A lot has changed from the original S1R. Notably, Panasonic over the last few years has added phase hybrid autofocus to a few of their cameras. It is, of course, here in the S1R2. You have 779 autofocus points, and not only do they work extremely well, but they're very customizable, and we kind of had to learn that as we're going through this. I'm now, as you can see, in a close-up shot, and it became a little more tricky to keep our dancer in focus while some of the more complex movements were being done. If we go into the main menu, we can see here we have the AF detection settings. I have this set to on right now, and you have a few types of subjects that you can detect. So we have this, of course, set to human, but you have animal, car, motorcycle and bike, train, and airplane. And if we go back, you can then target parts. You could do eye, face, body, or you can just do eye and face. So let's go back, and then AF custom setting. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. So I have this dialed up, AF speed up +2, it's a little faster. This of course just makes the actual changes of the AF faster, whereas sensitivity impacts how quickly it decides to make that change. Now this admittedly threw me off at first, because you would think that you'd want it to be locked on, and it will lock on if you do that. But in situations like I'm about to show you, there's so much movement and so much rapid changing of depth from close to camera to far away that it is kind of like you do need to be more responsive in this case. So as you can see, I have this maxed out +3 all the way to responsive. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like, some of the situations that can mean. So let's just set our focus here. We're all good, you can see it's tracking, and I'm gonna hit record. And then you can see here, yep. It moves in and out pretty quickly, pretty responsively. Even with twirls, it catches the face right again, like that. Exactly. Perfect. Time for a little handheld work. Well, on a gimbal. The S1R2 does actually have an incredible 8-stop stabilization built into the body. It works in coordination with the lenses if it has optical stabilization, but I want to keep things absolutely as smooth as possible. We're going for real polish here, so we're gonna stick with the gimbal for today. But that gives me another thing to test out here, and that is this combination tilt and flip out LCD. Now, you can see here we have a USB-C cable here. This is just giving power to the camera, but also in a gimbal situation, you often will have them at a lower angle. So in this case, we can tilt it out and then flip it out, which lets us have the screen still. I'll just rotate this here for you so you can see 90 degrees away from the cable. So you're still having this at a 90-degree position for when you're looking down at it, and it's free of any of the cabling. So another thing I can show you while we're here is I want to switch to the 6.4K open gate mode. Now, if I go into the quick menu here, I'm just going to dial it in, 6.4K, here we go. You can already see in the thumbnail here, but if I go out, now it fills up the entire LCD screen. This is the full 3x2 sensor. So I do happen to have guidelines here for 17:9. I put that in there just so I know kind of where my final image is going to be, but this gives us a lot more flexibility also for some tricky rotation shots. If we want to rotate within the bounds of a frame like this, in post-production, we have a little more height to do so. And now, so just back into the quick menu, I want to go for some slow motion. Now the camera does have a dedicated S&Q mode, but I do prefer to record things in native frame rates if possible. I like to have audio as a reference. I do like to have the native frame rate as playback. I adjust it in post. So anyway, we're gonna go over here. We're in 6.4K open gate right now. Let's slide right over to Cinema 4K at 120p. And you can see here it matches the 17:9 ratio. We're darker because we, thanks to the 180-degree shutter, we've lost quite a bit of light. So I'm gonna crank this up to compensate. We have a lot of leeway here because we have a dual native ISO setup. So we should still have a pretty clean image even up to here at 3200. And it's gonna help us a lot to just maintain things, keep consistency. I'm very curious to see how this footage looks. Well, let's just give it a shot. So we're moving on to some still photography. And now, as you can see, we've got a tethered setup going. I have a USB cable running right to a PC here, and I've got Capture One up. Now, this is some pretty incredible news right out of the gate at launch. Capture One is going to have support for the S1RII, and that's fantastic if you're into this kind of agency style work where you really want that responsive control over pretty much every facet of the shoot. We have a strobe here as well, and we've left most of our other colored lights on, so we're still painting the scene a little bit before the strobe. Now, we have a test photo here, but I'm just gonna fire up one shot here, and you can see it comes up within seconds on screen. So pretty normal stuff. Now, if we move over, we can see some of the controls that we have here. We have the camera itself showing up here, camera settings down here. I can just take a picture like this, and it should show up right within seconds, yep. And you can control pretty much everything, including the tracking modes, the subject detection modes, which I thought was pretty cool. And of course, you have very, very fine control over color processing. So let's just do a couple of shots here. Okay, our last test for the day, we're gonna look at the 40 FPS SH mode. That is the super high burst mode. There's actually two new settings here, to be fair. There is the super high, that's the 40 FPS, and then there is the high plus, which is a 10 FPS mode. So if you don't need to go so crazy, you can take it down a bit and go with only 10 FPS. But I kind of want to test the limits here, so we're just gonna go with it and take a listen. Right there. And go. Now I just want to go over really quickly some of the body design choices with the camera. We didn't get to talk about this before, mainly with the card slots. So you actually have two here. You have a CF Express Type B slot and an SDXC slot. Today we only stuck with SDXC, but you could use the CF Express for the highest bitrate, especially for the ProRes encoding here. Otherwise, the camera design follows the same philosophy that they've had in place since the S5 II and S5 IIX, which is to say that you have this exact button layout on the back and on the top to control all of your exposure and menus. The standout feature, of course, when it comes to the body is the tilt and free angle display, which we showed before. This comes in handy a lot. I last saw this, I believe, on the S1H, but that, of course, had the active cooling system on the back. So it's really nice that they've streamlined it here, and it's kind of unbelievable how much they've packed into this camera. So we are wrapped on the Panasonic S1RII. We did a little bit of everything today. Video, photos, some tethering examples as well. As you can see, it pretty much does everything. And not only that, but it has a lot of flexibility in every single mode. It's kind of unbelievable. 8.1K video that comes from a 44.3 megapixel sensor. You have resolution for days in both directions. So if you're doing detailed product shots, if you're doing portraiture, if you're doing anything that's like an agency style shoot and you need that sharpness, that resolution, you got it here. And really, what I like the most is the flexibility of the sensor. You have 6.4K for the open gate mode. You have 4K, of course. You have ProRes internal RAW recording. You have so many options at your disposal in multiple frame rates. You can pretty much shoot anything you want on this camera. The autofocus was fantastic on this. It outperformed even my expectations, and I knew that this was going to be challenging. There were, of course, some parts where we had to really fiddle with the settings, but once we found it, it worked out very well for us. So that is it for our time with the Panasonic S1RII. Let us know in the comments below how you could use it on your next shoot. I'm Doug with B&H, and I'll see you next time.